Let's get start demo first. So this is same application of generic repository and web API .NET 8. So in this session we'll actually implement a global exception in .NET 8. So I just created three endpoint. One is a no exception. So once I just execute, so just return whatever response. There is no exception, but see, we have forcefully add on some expect exception, not implement exception. So once I execute this endpoint, so I should have get some response and capture that logs and error. Where is that error, which is that error, what is the details, and what is the status. Everything we have captured using this global exception, and we show the response. And same things if we have suppose another exception, timeout exception. So let me try to get whatever exception over here. So once I execute that endpoint, definitely whatever that exception will get that status code and their details with that whatever that path, which path actually trying to get exception. So this will be implement in this session, and this is a new feature of .NET 8. So let's get start to implementation. So before start the implementation, I especially recommend if you first time visit my channel, so you can proceed whatever I just created, this .NET Core Web API plus .8, and which we have created a generic repository and unit of work, many things we have done in this generic repository series. So you can watch out first, check out that one, and then proceed this one, so that you can easily understand, okay, how we can set up that generic repository and all. So first what I can do, I will take a same example which I already covered over here. This is a simple .NET web application with .NET 8, and what I will do, I'll just create first uh, that exception. How we can create that exception class, so that it should be handle global exception, whatever exception in your application, they should be captured and show as a details. Okay, so let me create a folder that's called as a exception, and then inside what I will do, I'll just create one class that is called default exception. And inside this default exception, what I will do, I will just inherit one exception handler, which is provided by .NET 8. So this interface you can get only when you use that .NET 8. So exception handler, so definitely it should be over here with the same name, exception handler. So let me bring the namespace first. So I just get it, the bring the namespace Microsoft ASP.NET Core Diagnosis. So this will actually give the interface, and also once you implement, go to implementation, it will give that one method to implement. So what is that method? Let me wrap up over here for the next line. It will given you a HTTP context request, and also what are the exception, and then cancellation token. And now we can implement over here. So first what I will do, I'll just implement that I'll just add some logger over here. So what I will do, just create a default constructor over here, and just adding one logger, so that I can log whatever exception over here I can show you. But yeah, in real world we can use whatever dependencies, we can inject our dependencies over here, so that we can write a log to Elasticsearch, or any file system or Azure system. So where we want to log, so we can log it. So just by showing, I just give the demo for over here, like we can inject and we can use and log our exception. So I logger and just use whatever our logger I just want to log for this class, and simply create an instance and do the necessary things over here for create a field logger. So now our logger has been created, and now what I will do over here next, so just need to get rid for this code, not implementations, and I will just return first of return as return false. So don't worry, I'll tell you what is that actually return false. And it is not actually it is complaining just because we have to change, we can change our async method over because we using value task, so we can use async. So now see, is it returning false and true. Actually two things we can return over here, true or false. So where we will use true or false, that I will tell you a little bit later. So first I will do, just I need to create a log over here. Once I entered over in this method, so I just need to write a log. And now second, what I can do, I just whatever our http context, and then whatever response. Okay, if I get a exception in this method, if it call any exception, so then I will get it whatever exception in this exception method or this parameter, and I can write it over here. So simply what I will do, uh, I just create a response of http context. Whatever I behave http response, I just write a JSON and create an anonymous function, anonymous class over here. Just create a no problem details, which is given as Microsoft as well. So just create a class, and then it's this problem details have many fields, right? Many properties like status, types, and details and everything. So simply what I what I'm trying to do, simply I assign the, this is a default, suppose this is a default exception, right? So in anywhere which we have not handled any exception, so it's called a default exception. And I set it the status, whatever the status, and type also we are trying to get from that exception parameter, and title we set it over here, and details whatever exception message we are getting from this exception, we can add it assigning over here. And instance also, just we have to get this http request method and also that path, right? So whatever path and request we can add and we can show over here. So like this way we can bind our exception message. And finally what I can do, let me set is true. Okay, so when we'll use the true false, I will tell you, don't worry about that. So as of now, I just create a simple default exception, I just send it to true. Okay, so now our exception class is ready. Now how we can use it in .NET 8? So what I can do, I have to go to that program.cs file. Here there is a we can register over here as well. We have to register. So builder dot services dot add exception handler. Okay, so this is that method, extension method. We have to handle, we have to register our that whatever class we have created, right? So what is my class name? It is called is default exception handler, or default, what is the name, go to our default exception. So copy this one, go back and assign to over here, and simply you have to close that. So this is one setting you have to do that. Now second one you have to do, you have to register in this app as well. So this is a, we have just register, you know we have to register whatever class, resolve the dependency, but yeah, we have to call our app as well. So app dot exception, use exception handler. And here what you can do, you can just create a lambda expression over here, simple empty lambda expression, and pass it to that. That's it. Just use lambda expression. So use up empty lambda expression, you can just use that any variable over here. So just use that one. Okay, so this two setting you have to do that. Now second one is this, and first one is you have to register. So that's all. Once you done, definitely whatever exception in your application, okay, which is not handled anywhere, so you will get no that exception. So let me create one controller where I will just create that whatever I show is a demo, like three controller which have returning uh, one exception, endpoint returning the non exception, another two I will set at the exception. So how I can get that exception details over there? So let me open and create a new empty controller, call it to exception handler, and here what I will do, I just create a I have to just create a few new endpoint, right? So my first endpoint would be this. So simply using the HTTP GET endpoint for the demonstration perspective, but yeah, it's fine. So there is a no exception, and that means it is simply written. Okay. Now I have to actually write another endpoint, which is we have to forcefully just add a not implement exception. Okay. And now I just have to create another exception that is called timeout exception. So see, there's a three endpoint which I forcefully add two exception, not implement, and timeout exception, right? So let's me build the application to make sure like everything is uh, expected. Now build failed over here, yeah, just because you know while you trying to build your I exception handler, definitely it will throw where actually we have used and try catch exception, so it will actually trying to overload over here, so that's why it's been given the exception. So as of now what you can do, you can just specify uh, system, whatever the namespace actually that system, yeah, system namespace exception, you can just add your system if you are existing anywhere you trying to use the try catch, because we don't record as of now try catch because I already implement that exception. So whatever exception we'll get, automatically we'll get that response. So let me fix whatever existing problem we have over here. So see, now it's gone. Now let me build one more time. Now see, build is success, everything is fine. Let me run. Okay, now this is the exception handler. We have just created three endpoints. Let me verify everything is working. So now see, response is expected because there is no exception, but here second one. And also I'll just put the debugger point so that I can show you once any exception occur in our application, it will call this default exception handler automatically, right? So let me debugging over here and call over to here, try execute our debugger point over there. Okay, and you will get whatever exception over here. See, unable to resolve the type. Also we are getting some you know db context exception over here, right? So while loading I think we are getting some exception, so that's why that's over there. But yeah, now no, not implement exception over there. Let me execute, you will get it over here. Also it is true. So once you true, open here, see the implement operation not implement, and also whatever the exception we are getting, so we capture over here. Similar what I can do, just remove the debugger point over here and just call to another endpoint, which is we create timeout exception. So suppose we have get any timeout exception, so that also will capture over here. Okay, again it's a debugging point. Okay, not debugging, yeah, but yeah, while you will just put throw the exception, definitely while debugging you will reach it over here. So let me continue and see timeout exception over there, right? So this is just set a global exception so that any exception it will get, so it will call and show that exception, right? So there is another way I'll show you. Instead of this global exception, suppose I can define if it is timeout exception, so that I can capture differently, right? So how we can do that? So go to exception here. I'll just create another exception, for example class and timeout exception, correct? So let me create a timeout exception. Same things we have to do over here, whatever I have done in the default exception. So go to the default exception and call it to this exception handler and inherit to here, and again implement same method, and inside this method just call this all of the stuff over here, and then also according to this I will change it. Okay, so let me put it async, and also we have to inject ilogger. So let me add that ilogger part over here, a timeout exception, and create an instance and do the necessary code over here. Yeah, so that is done. Okay, let me stop debugging. So yeah, that is done. But here in here what I will do, so this is timeout exception, right? So there is a way we can capture the timeout or whatever exception that we can capture over here. So how we can do that? It's very simple. If that exception, whatever exception we have, this is that exception, right? So if this exception is our timeout exception, so then what I will do, inside this I will write this log. I will capture this log. If we have getting the timeout exception, then I will try to log. Similar I can, I will show you another. I will just create global exception class where I can implement many handle exception as well as unhandle exception. But yeah, this is a way we can separate exception class we can create it, and we can register, and when we can get it the exception. So both are way I will show you a little bit later. So see, simply we can capture timeout exception, and if it is this timeout exception, so what I will do, return true. So now I will explain why I am setting this true and this will false. So what is does actually? So see, if I want to break the chain, right? Suppose I just create many exception class. Suppose one exception, like I have create timeout exception, and another I just create a not implement exception. Okay, and also I have a many exception, right? So this is a chain of this exception class, right? So what I can do, suppose I am getting timeout exception, so if I try to true, so that means it is saying, so I just trying to break. Okay, I just get this timeout exception, just show this timeout exception and break it the chain. I don't go to the another exception. If I'm not set is the true, so definitely what will be it will get it will log, but it will just go to the another exception, for example in implement exception. So that's why it is true or false. If you want to break your your exception chaining, so you just have to true. Otherwise you don't want to break your exception, so what you can do, you just set it the false. So that's why it is true or false. Okay, I hope it is clear. So that is fine for here. And also what I can do, if it is a timeout exception, so definitely I have to set that it is uh timeout, request timeout, or whatever uh, whatever timeout exception code I can set it over here. Okay, so this is the timeout exception. Also I can set some title. I can change it some title, because this is a uh, only for timeout exception, so this is for timeout. And same things I can do for logging mechanism as well. So that's it, right? So let me call this exception, and also we have to register again to .program.cs file. So also this is a important, see, to register that if you have created multiple exception class, so that is important to sequence. Okay, so what is the sequence? See, this is a default exception. That means if any exception, right, suppose any exception, so that will definitely it will call and it will write the log, right? So it should be called at the end, not at the first, because I have created another exception, that is a timeout exception, which is simply it should be check. Okay, suppose before default exception, if I get the timeout exception, so this should be called and it should be log, and this should be true, so that it should not call this default exception, right? So that's why it's actually chain breaking mechanism over here, just set is true or false. So what I will do, whatever child exception, right, if it is global exception, that should be in the at the end, and whatever child exception means which should be print as a first, so that you have to register first. Builder.services dot add exception handler, and here that timeout exception, that's it, right? Timeout exception, its proper name or not. Okay, let me copy this same name. Okay, now see, my class name was different. So this is timeout exception and this is a global exception, right? And let me run one more time so that I can show you, like if it timeout exception, so I should have get the timeout exception, and see, this is not implement exception, so it should be a global exception, it should be capture. So again it is debugging, so let me continue. See, the status is 500 because it is a not implement exception, right? We have implement exception, that is timeout, so it should be called the timeout exception and it should be return the timeout exception. Let me run. See, this is a timeout exception, and also status is different, right? So this is how actually we can just create a different exception and we can register over here. Now I will show you one more mechanism. I have to create the global exception class, which will just whatever handle exception, and as well as if it is not handle exception, so it should be called the default exception. So that I will show you how we can do that. So what I can do, simply just comment this to services. I don't record because I'll just create a one, and so go to that solution, add class, and now I'll just create a global exception, global exception handler. Now similar, what I can do, I just call to that I exception handler, and bring that implementation, just implementation over here, similar what we have done, similar to what I can do, set is the asynchronous program, and here again I have to create a logger, just add a logger and pass it to your global exception handler over here, logger, and bring that, create the instance with the read only property, stop. So that is done. Now I have to implement that the timeout exception, right? So that is timeout exception, and also other exception also will handle, and also we have to handle the default exception. So what I can do, similar, I have timeout exception, right? So what I will do, I will copy this code of section over here, And where is that global exception? This is the global exception, right? So just create a section over here, right? And also just pass it to false. Okay, so now see, just I am handling a timeout exception. Similar, I can handle another exception, for example, argument exception, right? So let me copy and change it to over here. See, change it to exception is argument exception or other exception, argument argument exception, right? So suppose you will get that argument exception, so you can handle over here. So idea is here, like you can use that multiple exception over here, and else if suppose it will not match over here, it will not match over here, so then what I can do over here, else part I can show you the default exception. So whatever the default exception, what was the my default exception? My default exception was this, right? So go to here and set it over here, so that if do you have any exception, so you can just set it over here like this, if condition and else condition, you just set as the default. Suppose if any unhandled exception in your application, so that will call over here and it will add and log and print it over here, right? And one more things I will just explain, or I will just show you, like see, this is a it is not right things actually. See, everything is a common code, but I'm using that common code multiple times, right? So this is not a right thing. So in this case, what I can do, I just create a common common exception method, common message over here, and that we can use for that place. So let me write, create a class, for example, my exception, my exception. And in this my exception, what I can do, I just have to create you know one class, one method, so that will handle that exception message over here. See what I'm trying to do over here? Simply I just pass to http context and exception, and the status code and title, and same things I'm just trying to bind that message, right? So that I can use this common method for everywhere. I don't need to write again and again same code, right? So it is very straightforward and simple. Whatever we have this code, I just replace for as a common code, and I can use it for over here for that reusability. So what I can do, simply go to your here and just get it from here, get it that code, whatever the duplicate code, and I can call it to that. So first one, like timeout exception, I have to call this. So this is a timeout exception, call your my exception class, and here I just pass same http context and exception, and I set it, okay, it is a request timeout, and what is the titles, I send it over here. Similar, I can call it to for argument exception as well. So let me show you over here my exception. So my exception, again, it is a bad request for if any argument exception, so that means it's a bad request. And else part, again, what I can do over here, similar, that code I can just set it over here, my exception, and here again just pass same things and internal server error and whatever message I can pass it, and finally it is false, right? And just save it, and we have to register this class now. Go to that program file. See, I just commented these two things because I want to use the global exception, so that I don't want to create again and again repeated code, right? So add survey adds exception handler, and pass it to our class name. Save it and save and run it. Now we will get the same behavior, but we have create a common class. So common reusability code we have to use over here. So now see, execute, nothing. It is a response fine because there is a now not implementation. If you execute, continue, you will get that a 500 error because I have set it. It is a global exception and not implement. That's why. And then finally timeout. Execute, continue. Now I will get the timeout exception. So that is actually for that handle exception over here we can easily capture. So let me recap what here we have to trying to do so that you can get some idea again if you miss something in this session. So first what you can do, you just create a any class, okay, and then you have to just inherit that IException handler and you just implement whatever IException handler provide that method. Try handler async, it is just providing the three parameter, and this three parameter what I can do simply inside that exception we can handle that whatever handle exception based on that our known, and if it is not handled that also we can capture as an unhandled exception. And finally we can set it as false, and we have to configure this class inside that program.cs file. Here you can just use that builder the services add exception handler, you can pass it to your handler class. And one more setting you have to do that is inside after app builder.build, and then you have to use this settings app.use. Actually you have to call this middleware app.use exception handler. It's actually middleware you have to call and pass it to lambda expression and pass it to empty, right? So these all things we have to do to capture our global exception in .NET 8. So that's all for this session. Have a nice day and don't forget to like, subscribe and share.